welcome to this conversation during Copenhagen Fashion Week titled From Diversity to Equity. My name is Moussa Mchangama, and I will be moderating and hosting this panel today. I'm the co-founder of futurum, a Copenhagen-based sustainability and social justice-focused strategic agency, working within the realms of fashion and culture. It's my absolute pleasure to host this talk today, because the topic of diversity, and especially the topic of equity, is one that is on my mind. And I'll introduce why in a little bit. But before I do that, I would like to just briefly have our guests, our two esteemed panelists, briefly introduce themselves. Mona, maybe if you will start.
My name is Mona Mohammed Ali, and I'm the diversity and inclusion editor for Vogue Scandinavia. I also run the diversity modeling agency called Fiiri.
Hello, my name is Silas Adler, and I'm the creative director and founder of Soulland, a clothing company that are pushing towards 20 years anniversary. So I've been in this business for a while.
Yeah. How does it feel saying that? Almost 20 years. That's
I feel old because I realized that I've spent more, the bigger part of my life actually being involved in Soulland. But I started very young, so it's like I feel old, but I also feel like I have a lot to accomplish. So there's a balance there.
Absolutely. And maybe we'll dive into some of the things that needs to be accomplished in this talk. As I said in the beginning, diversity and equity is very much on my mind. We are currently at futurum launching a new report, an industry report, that is focusing on this specific topic. Because I think, having worked in this industry for the last 15 years now as well, almost, looking at how the industry conversations have evolved from not existing to existing, and now maybe sort of pushing itself a little bit, has been quite interesting, especially as a queer black man myself. And the report that we are doing now, or are publishing now, is trying to situate how companies in these industries work with diversity, or think that they engage with diversity, how experts are looking at it from an outside perspective, and how 10 people who have different minority backgrounds, who are working in the industries, feel working in the industries, to try and shift from just talking about diversity as sort of something where you can, count how many of someone are there in a company or whatever it may be, to say this is about also building a system, a fashion system, that is safe for different people to work in, that grasps the complexities of human life, and that has to change in order to accommodate all of us. So that's the focus for this talk, and that is the key sort of concept as well of equity. I'll talk more about equity in a bit, but before I do that, Mona, I would like to ask you, because you're one of the experts that we interviewed for this report. And one of the things I remember you saying is, we focused on external factors for some time now, we need to address the internal ones. Would you maybe tell briefly what that means?
Yeah, I mean, it's for the longest time, especially within the modeling industry, that's what we need to see representation to sell these products. So people need to make sure that they feel included and seen. However, what I have realized is that when those people are in the front of the camera, who's actually usually feel completely alone behind the scenes as well. We haven't, a lot of the times also when for companies and brands to get the best results, you have to make sure that you hire the right person for the right job. So let's say if there's a makeup artist who isn't able to do the makeup, the effect, first, not only will the client not get the best results, the model might feel like they don't have the right products for this person. So we have been trying to get help educate or bring in the creatives behind the scenes, because that's the place where you'll get the best results. The person will feel like they're not excluded. They feel like they're not the only person in the room that they can relate themselves to. One of the things that I've researched as well was, where does the issue begin? And it's usually, I always talk about hair. That's something I'm really fond of. So a lot of the people education is they don't actually learn how to do black hair or certain type of hair, which then means that they'll educate themselves and graduate. Then when they go into the industry, they won't be able to book the model because they don't know how to do their hair. Then that means then you won't get the model, you won't book them, and then it just becomes an evil circle nothing gets accomplished. But when it comes to hiring within companies, I do have a lot of friends who always ask me like, how do you hire? You know, where do you begin? Where does it start? And a lot of times maybe when, you know, we are POCs and maybe in the creative fields, that's not something that is always encouraged from parents, let's say. But what we do believe is like, they're not getting the opportunities because they are already starting at a lower level than most people. So that's something that we always consider as well, to make sure that the clients and the people are bringing in, because a lot of the times, especially in Scandinavia, people are afraid of taking risks and chances on the youth. So it's really important that clients and brands actually do reach out. Where do you go to the schools? So, yeah.
I think what you're saying there, that starting from a different place is important. And because I remember as well, starting out in the industry, that there was no one actually. You, Silas, was probably the only other one, along with a few others, where I could see myself reflected. So you don't have a path. You don't see yourself anywhere. So you don't know that something can actually happen, or what can actually happen. And then what you're saying is, for companies to book different models, for example, it's a much bigger consideration than just doing that first booking. It's about elevating people who've been excluded when you then want to include them. So how do you go about? Because I know when you in Fiiri, for example, work with companies, you're very sort of adamant in saying you need to consider a lot of different things.
Yeah.
How do you prep companies for this?
I mean, I always try to, obviously people have their own preferred teams to work with, but I always try to encourage to be like, hey, for you to book this kind of model, do you have the right team? Because for me, it's always like encouraging to be like, for you to get the best results, have you researched, have you worked with somebody else? I can always recommend people. So I spend a lot of my time researching, finding these creatives, working with them before to make sure that they are, you know, good or at the level that the clients are expecting to do. However, we have had some people that have worked in the industry for a long time but never really got these chances. But as soon as the clients are, maybe when I get booked for something, I include that person, I bring them, so the client then feels, okay, this is good, you know? So you kind of have to handhold a little bit for the clients, but I do also think it's a sense of fear with somebody they haven't worked with. But for me, in my mind, it makes sense to actually, well, this person is actually an expert of this. They can do all of these things. Why not take a chance on actually giving that? But I guess it's just like sending suggestions, making sure that they are aware. And I always say there are people out there. You just have to not make excuses that you can't find them. So I try to make it as easy as possible for them to create like documents with like all their contact details. This is where you can find them. Please contact them. So I always say like, hey, have you worked with this person? They're amazing. So that's the only thing for now that I feel like I can do. But we hope that the clients can take their own initiatives and go out and find. I think I lived in London for the longest time, and the mentality there was to always find the youngest, hot, coolest new creative. Here it's slightly different. You go with the person that you're usually more comfortable with. So we're trying to encourage people to work with somebody else that's not just their friends or somebody that they worked with for a long time.
Right.
Yeah.
I like that you also point to that sort of the sense of fear. That's something that I can recognize as well a lot in my work, and also in the report, that fearing an outcome or fearing backlash or a shitstorm or feeling that you don't know enough to do something in itself becomes sort of an argument. And I would like to explore that a little bit more. But before we do that, Silas, you, of course, also represent a sort of both a creative point, but also a brand, sort of a brand perspective, so to say. And as you said in the beginning, you've now been part of this industry for 20 years. How would you say that, if you were to reflect on sort of that move from this topic being non-existent to it being about diversity a little bit, and now to sort of pushing some boundaries, because I know that you've done a lot of work and a lot of thought on these topics. How would you say that your own development has been for yourself and for Soulland?
I mean, Soulland is by heart crash test for me and my business partner Jacob. So everything that we've done since we started have been without any education, and therefore everything is trial and error. And I mean also this topic, because as you mentioned, when I started out, it wasn't even a topic, and like from a personal perspective, when I think back about that time, like all the challenges that I faced coming into the industry was challenges of my skin color, but it was also challenges of my age, and it was also challenges of coming in with no education, you know. So it was like there was so much against the odds that I mean I would not be able to look back and separate what was what. But I think like I think from a brand perspective, and I mean I'll be fully transparent. It was the same for Soulland, of course. Some of the first step you take is representation in terms of putting your brand out there, and I mean that's a lot what Mona is working with, but then what comes after that, and the thing that comes after that is something that is, I mean, that's the hard part, because that's actually where you have to like start re-educating yourself. And if you don't have any education to start with, like how do you even like actually start to dig deeper and look into the flaws in the system? And one of the things that I've been really noticing, and this has been also by doing some volunteer work, is you also mentioned it briefly before, is the access to the fashion world is not equal. The access to the fashion world is shorter for some people than for other people. And it all starts about actually showing what the fashion world is about, because for a lot of people, they don't even know that it exists, and they don't know the opportunities that are there. And all companies, I mean, a lot of companies will always say like, we just want to hire the best people for the job. But if the system from the beginning is set up in a way that certain people are not even like told that the system exists, then you have like two problems, because from a brand perspective, how can you say that you're actually getting the best people for the job if there's a group of people that are not even part of like the first step? And you have another problem, because you're actually keeping people out that should have the same access as everyone else. And I think that this is, I mean, if you start by the root of the problem, this is not something that is excluded to fashion only. I think that's a very general problem with creative industries. And some of the volunteer work that Soulland have been involved with have been with the younger boys from socially challenged neighborhoods in around Copenhagen. And when you sit down with a 6-year-old kid that thinks that there is 4 opportunities for his career, he doesn't even know that there's something that creative jobs exist, then that's where the problem starts. And I think that's something that, I mean, of course, the fashion industry have a big responsibility, but society as a general has a big responsibility. And I think that, I mean, now I'm talking from generally from a Scandinavian perspective, because I also know Sweden quite well and have lived in Sweden as well. But I think like the Scandinavian model has a problem in showing the opportunities that are there for young people. Because one thing is that if you have a challenge from like being accepted from your family, but if that is combined with society not, I mean, then society should give you the extra hand, you know, and help break down some of those cultural barriers. And I mean, I think that we are like from being a part of the world that are using creativity and design and invention as part of our like, that's how we see that we like our relevance in the future. Then we have a big problem if we're not activating all the possible forces, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you point to something so interesting and relevant here, which is also the reference of us being in Scandinavia right now. Because I think, and it's something that a lot of the people that we've interviewed for the report is saying, it's something that I know personally, it's something that is an ongoing theme, I think, in a lot of the work that I do as well, which is that we have this narrative of being equal in the context of sort of Scandinavian welfare societies, and of thinking that there are systems in place that make us equal. And that idea in itself sort of masks inequalities, because if we talk to each other, not the two of us, but as in the industry, if we talk to each other from a point of view where we just initially don't see that we are not equal, then we won't really work towards becoming equal. And I think that's the whole point with equity as a concept, is saying, I see that we are that you have to fight harder, so I will lift you up. I will build a ladder so that you can get up. Or working with that so actively, which I think is it's a completely different way of working in a Scandinavian context, because we're so used to sort of things needs to happen by themselves,
exactly,
or organically, or you know, whatever it may be.
I would really love to see someone dig into the data of where people now we're focusing on fashion, like where are people like people that work in fashion, where are they actually where do they come from? And when I say like where do they come from, I want to go look back into like what neighborhoods do they come from? Which schools did they go to? Which high schools did they go to?
What access do they have?
Which university did they have to? Because I think that there's something, we need to know like what the path into the fashion industry is, if we want to change it. And it's becoming more and more fragile, because I know a lot of people in the industry, they want to do better, but I think that part of really understanding the problem is like to see the sort of like what highways have like the express access into the fashion industry.
Yeah. And how is that often connected to that sort of the best one for the job, which is also what you're mentioning. But Mona, I like that you were saying that Fiiri is also sort of a way of removing excuses for not doing anything.
Yeah.
Could you say a little bit about the sort of how it's been received over the last couple of years, and has that evolved? Do you see sort of a change in the way that businesses or clients approach this topic and understand their role in hiring models or creatives or whatever it may be, or do you feel that
there's still a long way to go, because as we were talking about, it becomes like the education, like they haven't had the opportunities to work with certain photographers or work with certain makeup artists to get that level, but they are really good and they have the skills that they really need. Because sometimes even when we work with editorials, it doesn't mean that just because you are fantastic and you worked in the industry for a long time that you can't make a mistake. It is possible for people to make mistakes. So I want people to understand that even though you book somebody that you know or you can trust, you know are really fantastic, it doesn't mean that they might not fail at one point. So you have to actually be able to be willing to let somebody do that, and maybe you'll be surprised as well. However, when we recommend at the same time, they're like, people are again very worried. It's always the first negative thing. It's like they're not thinking, this person can actually blow my mind. They can actually do something fantastic. The first thing that comes into mind was like, well, they haven't worked with this person or that person. And again, it's like following this structure that they think that is what you need to do to get there. But they haven't considered that, how are these people getting that access? They're not coming there. And they have come very far without getting the help that maybe somebody else got that help,
Yeah.
So people are willing, and they are, as you said, like people are wanting to help, but they just don't always know how. So my approach is always like reach out to people. Like, don't be afraid to ask the questions that you're afraid of asking, because if you don't ask that question, we're not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
So it's like letting go of that fear and actually reaching out to people. Say like, I don't actually know how to approach this.
Yeah.
Can you help?
With that, I might add, reach out to people, but if you do have people with different sort of minority backgrounds, whether it be, you know, gender, sexuality, age, socioeconomic status, race, whatever it may be, maybe reach out to others than your own employees, because it often also puts them in a sort of in a complex position where they need to teach their own managers, for example, which isn't necessarily a sort of a super sort of comfortable position to be in if you couple that with work. But I would like as well to also ask you in terms of Vogue Scandinavia, because I think it's safe to say that you're probably the first sort of diversity editor in a Scandinavian context.
Yeah.
How do you then understand your own role, maybe in getting, so that's an access that you have gotten. How do you use that or consider that?
I mean, we are, for us, it's like, it's amazing that first and foremost that we have that opportunity, or I have the opportunity to sit in this position that I am. And my job exists of like constantly researching and finding and reaching out to people and giving them some sort of opportunity. And it has been received so well. We have given young illustrators to do a job for us when it comes to makeup. So they have never even considered doing that. So working with Martina has been amazing in actually allowing young people to come in. And we are digital first as well, which means that, you know, there won't be like major budget cost or anything like that to actually get, you can submit your work, you can actually commission them. We also have started introducing talents that we have from minority backgrounds who actually achieved. So we're actually talking about their journey and what mistakes or what how they actually, what education they had, if they had an education, or how did they get into the industry. So we're doing a series of how I got there to help educate younger kids, to show them that actually we have my friend Fernando Torres, he was one of the first people that we did that with, and he's now a creative director for Puma. So it's like, how did he get to that position? What jobs have you had before? So we're going to be doing several of those. Silas, you're going to be the next one. So we're doing that with you. It's going to really help educate also the young kids and see that there are people that you can look up to. There are people that can help you, find the right path, I guess. But again, it also gives access to designers and other people to discover talents that they haven't before thought about reaching out to. Yeah. So we are, in a way, making it more collaborative. And again, we are working on a mentorship program as well for creative to submit their work, and then like have our video editor, photo editor to look through and maybe do guidelines of like what are the expectations when submitting your work, what we want you to do, how to do it. So, and again, like we get a lot of submissions and people reaching out to us, and it's fantastic to see that just opening that little door, what that can really do for somebody. Yeah. So I always say like, whatever advice that I give to people is like, you have so much more power than you think you do. Just open the door for one person, like each month. If you just give a little bit of time to somebody, you won't believe the impact that you'll have.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's beautifully put. And it also leads back to your point, Silas, of doing volunteer work and meeting up with young people that have never seen this as an opportunity. Could you elaborate a little bit on how that has maybe changed your perspective, or what that has given you in terms of your work and seeing your role in this industry as well?
Yeah, I mean, first off, it's like it makes you realize that you wish you had more time, because it's very rewarding, and you wanted to do much more of it, but obviously it's like it's hard to schedule in. But what I really learned was actually seeing some of being reminded of why I started, and the joy of just wanting to create something. And as you said, like just giving like that little access, that door can just be information. It can just be being told that you can actually do it if you want, just like someone else believing in you helps so much, So it takes me back to when I was 17 and I started Soulland with knowing nothing about the industry, and actually I didn't know that there was an industry. I just know that I wanted to try to create something. So I think that it's very rewarding, and it's to see young people, like the spark in their eyes when they realize that they have the power to change their own path, which I think for a lot of minority group is something that I think a lot have in common, and that's the feeling of the control of their life is in the hands of someone else. And that's something that's one thing that I've seen like over and over again with the minorities and marginalized people. It's like this this feeling and this frustration of like the control has been taken away from you. And this is because this is a little bit off topic, but I had a conversation with a company about a partnership, and they were saying like, but we are a little bit afraid of fashion because fashion is like it's elitist. And I said, well, fashion is what you make of it. Fashion is not actually something. Fashion is just a canvas. But you can use it for many different things. And that's why I think it's very interesting, because as many obstacles and as many things that can feel like a closed door or a brick wall, we can also climb the wall, and we can also like smack the door in. And I think that's interesting with fashion, that fashion actually have the ability to gather people. And that's also what the industry are realizing. And that's, because it's also about money. And I think the industry has also realized, okay, but all the people that we like pretend doesn't exist, when they start to like make their own system, then it will flip, and all of a sudden we will be dependent on them, And if we look at what have happened within fashion for the last 5 years, you can really see like, okay, what's the most important messages that have come out of fashion? What are the most important stories? Who are the people that have meant the most to fashion over the last 5 years? We don't even have to go into that, It's so clear. And that's the power that fashion also have, and that's the positive side, that you can actually just make it your own and go with it. And when young people realize that, and you can see that in the eyes, that they realize, I don't need to follow any rules. I can just do me. That's beautiful.
I think that is so beautiful. I also think it does. I know also from myself that is something that comes with with the positions that we have built for ourselves. That realization of we can just do something differently, or we can just build another system. That kind of confidence, I think, is something that comes with experience as well, because that is something you have never been told. And I think it's such an important point. So how then, because we're finishing off, we only have a couple of minutes left, how do we pass on that knowledge? And how do we make others understand, other companies understand, for example, that their understanding of what is beautiful or what is good or what is, marketable or what is correct is biased or is narrow and needs to unfold so others can get in?
I think that there's, obviously there's one thing that have happened, and that is that there are now people that are out there, where before the people that worked in the industry was very behind the scenes. The whole industry was very behind the scenes, where you have like other genres, like music, for instance. You had the person that you could relate to, There was all these people that you could relate to and that could inspire you. But in fashion, it was very shut off. And of course, social media have opened up. So now the kids can actually see the people that are designing their clothes and they can be like directly inspired of that, and that have sparked this topic enormously, of course. And I think that we have to like push that on all different levels to actually show what the industry is about. We can't like that responsibility cannot be only on people of color.
No.
I mean, we have already worked to get here, and if it also becomes our job to like educate the next generation, it needs to be the whole industry that realize that it's a shared responsibility to like open up and let people see what the industry is about, and letting people understand that you can do with it whatever you want.
No, I totally agree with that. It's like not having like the limited belief, because nothing is actually impossible. We have achieved so much. And I believe that for people just have to slowly just let go of this fear again that I keep mentioning. It's like feeling afraid of like the unknown. But at the same time, we have so much access. You said with Instagram, there's so many people coming out. It's just like just allowing people to walk through the door.
I think that's a beautiful, beautiful and positive note to end on. Allow people to walk through your door is a great sentence. Thank you so much, both of you, for not just being here and sharing your perspectives, but also continuously doing the work that you're doing and trailblazing in the way that you are. It's a privilege to sit next to you. Thank you for watching and enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Remade, reduced, recycled.
Art.
Sustainable.
Copenhagen.
Natural functional exploration.
Remade.